If tomorrow the United States fell into a deep recession, what would actually happen? Most people picture the stock market crashing, unemployment rising, and businesses going bankrupt. That is the obvious part. There is another question that is just as important but rarely discussed. Not every state will suffer in the same way. Some states will only slow down for a while. Other states are already so fragile that a serious recession could push them to the point of real breakdown. If we look at the country through the way Warren Buffett thinks, focusing on margin of safety, debt, basic structure, and the ability to survive bad times, 5 states stand out as especially vulnerable. These are states where a deep recession would not just be a temporary setback. It could trigger a chain reaction that affects jobs, public services, infrastructure, and even the long-term future of entire communities. This article looks at those 5 states, from number 5 to number 1, using 4 simple questions that match the way an investor like Buffett analyzes risk. First, how poor or financially stretched are the people living there? Second, how solid are the jobs and how diverse is the local economy? Third, how strong or weak is the state budget and its rainy day fund? Fourth, how heavy is the burden of debt and basic living costs on ordinary households? With that in mind, let us start with the 5th most vulnerable state, number 5, Indiana, the industrial heart that depends on fragile assembly lines. On the map of American industry, Indiana is one of the big engines of the Midwest. It is full of plants that make cars, steel, industrial equipment, and components. Many towns in this state live and die with the fate of a few large factories. In good times, this model works. Car sales are strong, companies order new equipment, and exports move steadily. The state collects tax revenue from healthy businesses and employed workers. To most people, that looks safe. But Warren Buffett always asks the question, what happens when the cycle turns? In a recession, buyers delay car purchases, companies cut investment, and new orders dry up. For a manufacturing-heavy state like Indiana, that does not just mean a small slowdown. It means the whole chain reacts. First, overtime disappears, then hours are cut, then layoffs come in waves. Whole industrial towns lose their main source of income. The deeper problem is that Indiana does not have a large margin of safety on the government side. The rainy day fund covers only a modest share of annual spending. That is not enough to absorb a big hit to tax revenue. When corporate and income taxes fall, the state government is forced to make hard choices. It can cut spending and weaken public services, or increase pressure on taxpayers at the very moment they are already struggling. Neither option is good during a recession. The social safety net in Indiana is also not especially generous. Public health spending, welfare programs, and unemployment benefits are often ranked near the bottom among states. So when a worker loses a job at a factory, there is not much of a cushion behind them. A family that depends on a single paycheck, has a mortgage, a car loan, and credit card debt can fall into crisis after only a few months without income. From a Buffett-type viewpoint, Indiana looks like a business whose revenue depends on a small group of customers with thin reserves and high exposure to the economic cycle. As long as the orders keep coming, it is fine. Once demand drops, it becomes very difficult to hold on. That is why Indiana is placed at number 5. It may not be the poorest state, but its dependence on heavy industry, weak social protection, and limited fiscal reserves make it one of the places that could be hit hardest early in a serious recession. Number 4, South Carolina, a tourist paradise that turns fragile when cash flow stops. On the surface, South Carolina looks like a growth success story. It has beautiful beaches, historic cities like Charleston, and resort areas that attract tourists from across the country. Retirees move in from more expensive states. Remote workers come searching for a lower cost lifestyle. New housing developments rise along the coast and around popular cities. But if you look beyond the postcard image and think like a long-term investor, the foundations do not look nearly as solid. Much of the recent growth in South Carolina depends on tourism, construction, and real estate development. These sectors work wonderfully when money is cheap and optimism is high. Yet they are among the first to crash when the economy slows. When families start cutting back, they cancel beach vacations, delay buying second homes, and drop the idea of relocating to another state. At the same time, housing in South Carolina has become much more expensive than it used to be. Home prices have risen strongly since the pandemic, but incomes have not kept pace. As a result, a high share of households now spend more than 30% of their income on housing costs. That is a classic warning sign. Families that appear stable are in fact living on a knife edge. After they pay the mortgage or the rent, there is very little left. Losing a job for just 2 or 3 months can put them at risk of missing payments or even losing the roof over their heads. The state government does not have very thick protection either. South Carolina is not one of the rich states with large reserves. Its rainy day fund covers only a limited part of its budget. Meanwhile, spending per student on education and per person on health care is often in the lower group nationally. When a recession hits and tax revenue falls, it is very easy for these systems to become overloaded. Schools become crowded, hospitals struggle, social support programs face pressure or cuts at exactly the wrong time. The labor market has already shown signs of weakness even before any official national recession. Unemployment in South Carolina has been inching up faster than the national average. That trend is the real danger. If jobs are already becoming less secure during a normal slowdown, then a full recession can push job losses much higher and much faster. From a Warren Buffett-style angle, South Carolina looks like a fast-growing company whose earnings depend heavily on a few fashionable revenue streams. It grows quickly in good weather, but cash flow is unstable, reserves are thin, and fixed obligations are rising. Once customers slow down their spending, the risk of a hard landing is real. That is why South Carolina takes the number 4 spot on this list. It is not the poorest state, but it is one of the most exposed to a sudden stop in tourism and real estate-driven growth. Number 3, Nevada, a state built on people coming to play Nevada, is almost a symbol of service-based, entertainment-driven economics. When people around the world think of Nevada, they think of Las Vegas. Casinos, hotels, bright lights, shows, conventions. Everything revolves around one idea. People with money in their pockets are willing to fly in and spend it. In good times, this model is extremely profitable. Hotels are packed, casinos are busy, theaters and shows are full, and the state collects a steady stream of taxes tied to these activities. It looks like a winning formula, but this model has a structural weakness that Buffett would instantly see. It depends almost completely on optional spending. When an economic downturn comes, people do not stop buying food and medicine first. They cancel trips to Las Vegas. The tax system adds more risk. Nevada does not have a state income tax. Its budget relies heavily on taxes and fees connected to gaming, hospitality, tourism, and retail spending. Those revenues can be huge when the economy is strong, but they drop sharply when people cut back on travel and entertainment. The rainy day fund of the state is also relatively small. That means that a few quarters of weak tourism can create serious budget stress. The government then faces a painful choice. It can cut services, postpone infrastructure projects, or attempt to raise other fees just as residents are under pressure. None of these moves is popular, and all of them can deepen the pain. The job market in Nevada is structurally fragile. The state frequently ranks near the top in unemployment rates. Many jobs are in hotels, restaurants, casinos, and live entertainment. These positions often pay modest wages and depend heavily on tips and available work hours. When visitor numbers decline, hours are cut and incomes fall almost immediately. On top of that, consumer debt in states like Nevada tends to be high. Many residents juggle mortgages, car loans, and credit card balances, while their income depends on a service sector that rises and falls with tourism. When recession hits and income falls but debt payments do not, delinquency risk rises quickly. Seen through an investor's lens, Nevada resembles a company with very strong earnings in good times, but a highly volatile customer base, little diversification, and limited reserves. It lives off people going out to have fun. When those people stop coming, everything from jobs to tax revenue gets squeezed at the same time. For that reason, Nevada is ranked at number 3. In a serious national recession, it is one of the states that could slide into trouble faster than many people expect. Number 2, Mississippi, where poverty is already present and recession is just the final push. Mississippi is widely known as one of the poorest states in America. Its poverty rate is consistently at or near the highest in the country. A large share of its residents live on very low incomes, often close to or below the federal poverty line. From a Warren Buffett perspective, this is a huge structural risk. Buffett likes businesses with strong margins and extra room to absorb shocks. In Mississippi, at the household level, very few people have such a margin. Most of their income is spent on basic needs. Savings are limited or non-existent. Any unexpected expense or job loss can quickly lead to debt problems. The economic structure of Mississippi also offers limited upside. The state does not have major high-wage engines like large technology clusters or global financial centers. Instead, it relies on agriculture, some manufacturing, and lower-wage services. Growth in the state's output has often been weak. Some years it has barely grown at all. The public sector faces its own constraints. The state has relatively small reserves, while the demand for spending on education, healthcare, and infrastructure is very high. Many public schools operate with limited resources. Rural hospitals in particular are often at risk of closing. Bridges, roads, and water systems can be in poor condition. Now imagine a national recession landing on top of these existing weaknesses. Low-wage workers are among the first to lose their jobs. Others remain employed but see their hours cut. Inflation may already have raised the cost of essentials, so even a small loss of income hurts badly. Many families in Mississippi are already close to the edge financially. A recession can push them over that edge. They fall behind on rent or mortgage payments. Credit card balances grow. Car loans go unpaid. Medical bills are delayed or ignored. At a larger scale, this can create something close to social breakdown in certain areas. Homelessness can rise. Closures of clinics or hospitals can hurt entire regions. Crime and social unrest can increase. Young people who have the ability to move may leave the state altogether, draining human capital and making long-term recovery even harder. To someone thinking like Buffett, Mississippi looks like a business with thin margins, heavy underlying social obligations, almost no buffer, and a fragile base. It does not take a huge shock to cause serious damage. Even a medium-sized recession can create long-lasting scars. That is why Mississippi stands at number 2 on this list of states that could be hit hardest if the national economy falls into deep trouble. Number 1, Louisiana, when an economic storm hits a place already underwater. At the top of the list is Louisiana, a state where many different risk factors come together in one place. If you ask Warren Buffett which kind of company he would avoid the most, it would look a lot like this structure. Louisiana has high poverty and low median income. It relies heavily on industries that are very sensitive to global and national cycles, such as oil and gas, petrochemicals, tourism, and shipping along the Mississippi River. Its budget is not especially strong, and its rainy day fund as a share of spending is among the weaker in the country. On top of all that, it faces extreme climate risk. For ordinary residents, life is already challenging, even without a recession. Wages are modest. The cost of key protections like homeowners insurance and flood insurance has been rising as climate-related risk increases. Utility costs and other fixed expenses are not low. Many families are squeezed between unstable income and rising mandatory costs just to maintain a basic standard of living. The economic base of the state is also vulnerable. When the global economy slows, demand for energy tends to weaken. Prices can become volatile. Investment in new projects is delayed or canceled. Tourism slows as people travel less. Shipping volumes through ports can decline. Each of these trends directly affects tax revenues and jobs in Louisiana. At the same time, the state has only a limited financial cushion. Its rainy day reserves are small relative to its needs. When revenues fall, the government quickly faces pressure on its ability to fund schools, hospitals, infrastructure, and disaster response. Then there is the climate and infrastructure problem. Louisiana is on the front line of hurricanes, coastal erosion, flooding, and rising sea levels. The state must spend large sums on levees, drainage systems, roads, bridges, and water infrastructure. Every major storm forces another round of expensive repairs. That means even in normal times, a big part of the budget is consumed just to keep things from getting worse. In a deep recession, all of these pressures can hit at once. Jobs disappear in energy, tourism, and construction. Tax revenues fall. The cost of maintaining infrastructure remains high. Families struggle to keep up with mortgages, insurance, and basic bills. In some areas, this can start to look like systemic failure. Local governments may not have enough money to operate normally. Infrastructure may not be repaired or upgraded in time. More people may decide to leave the state, especially younger and more mobile workers. As they leave, the tax base shrinks further, creating a downward spiral. From an investment perspective, Louisiana resembles a company with unstable revenue, big fixed costs, serious external risks, and almost no financial buffer. It is already under pressure in good years. When a major recession arrives, the risk is not just a temporary downturn. It is the risk of large parts of the system simply not functioning as intended. For these reasons, Louisiana is ranked number one on this list. If the United States falls into a severe recession, it is one of the states most likely to experience not only economic pain, but a deeper structural crisis. Conclusion, looking at these 5 states through the mindset of Warren Buffett highlights one core idea. The key is not only how well you are doing today, but how much margin of safety you have when conditions turn against you. Indiana, South Carolina, Nevada, Mississippi, and Louisiana each have their own story, but they share several patterns. They depend heavily on vulnerable industries. Their fiscal buffers are limited. Many residents are burdened by high living costs and debt. Public systems and infrastructure are often not strong enough to absorb a major shock. If a serious recession comes, these weaknesses could show up very quickly. Some states will bend and recover. These 5 are at much greater risk of breaking.